Did you know the Avatar cycle has existed for over 10,000 years? That's thousands of avatars, an endless line of heroes sworn to protect peace and balance. Yet somehow, we only know a handful of them in detail. But the truth is far bigger than that, because every avatar inherited the consequences of the one before them. Every generation carried unfinished mistakes, and being the avatar was never all beds of roses. While some avatars became legends, others were feared, misunderstood, or completely forgotten by history itself. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into the lives of all 12 avatars revealed throughout the series.
The important figures to the show we all love. And without wasting any more time, let's begin with the first avatar to ever exist, Avatar Wan. Before the Four Nations, before the Avatar state, there was Wan. And honestly, without him, the Avatar universe as we know it wouldn't even exist. Over 10,000 years before Korra's era, humanity lived in fear, not of war, not of nations, but of spirits. The world back then was almost unrecognizable. Humans didn't live across massive continents or powerful kingdoms. Instead, they survived on the backs of gigantic lion turtles. Entire civilizations carried across the world by ancient beings so powerful they almost felt godlike. Beyond those cities, the spirit wilds, and entering those wilds meant death. Hostile spirits dominated the world outside human civilization. So whenever humans ventured out beyond the safety of the lion turtles, they were temporarily granted the power of an element for protection, meaning bending originally wasn't inherited, it was borrowed. And that single detail completely changes the mythology of the entire franchise. Now, Wan himself wasn't born special. He wasn't a chosen hero. He wasn't royalty. He was basically a street thief. He stole food, started fights, survived through cleverness and desperation. But unlike many others around him, Wan genuinely cared about people. He often stole specifically to help struggling citizens survive. And eventually, that compassion changed the fate of the entire world. One day, Wan became entangled in the ancient conflict between Ra'ava and Vaatu, the primordial spirits of light and chaos. Ra'ava represented balance, peace, order. Vaatu represented darkness, and the two had battled each other since long before humanity even existed. At first, Wan didn't fully understand what he was interfering with. In fact, he accidentally made everything worse. By separating Ra'ava from Vaatu during their battle, Wan unknowingly allowed chaos to spread across the world. Vaatu grew stronger, spirits became increasingly violent, and humanity fell deeper into fear. And from that moment onwards, Wan dedicated the rest of his life to fixing the disaster he caused. That theme would eventually define the Avatar cycle itself, because throughout history, so many avatars spent their entire lives cleaning up the consequences left behind by previous generations. Now, during his journey, Wan became the first human capable of wielding multiple elements. But contrary to what many fans believe, Wan couldn't naturally hold all four elements safely at first. Ra'ava actually carried the elemental powers for him, switching between them whenever necessary while Wan slowly adapted. And this process was unbelievably dangerous. The human body was never designed to contain all four elements simultaneously. That's part of what makes Wan so important. He wasn't born powerful. He became powerful through suffering, through sacrifice, and through perseverance. Eventually, harmonic convergence arrived, the once every 10,000 year cosmic event where spiritual energy reaches its absolute peak. During the final battle against Vaatu, Wan permanently fused with Ra'ava, and that moment created the first avatar. Not just a powerful bender, but a reincarnating bridge between humanity and spirits, a living balance. But even then, Wan's victory wasn't perfect. Although Vaatu was imprisoned, humans and spirits became permanently separated into different worlds, meaning the balance Wan dreamed of was never truly achieved. And unlike every avatar after him, Wan had nobody to guide him. He faced everything completely alone, which makes his final moments genuinely heartbreaking. As Wan lay dying beside Ra'ava, he admitted he feared he hadn't done enough, that humanity would continue struggling long after he was gone. And Ra'ava responded with one of the most important lines in Avatar history: "We will be together for all of your lifetimes." And from that moment onward, the Avatar cycle truly began.
Avatar Sonum. Following Wan came generations of avatars lost almost entirely to history.
But among the most fascinating of them all was Avatar Sonum, an air nomad avatar who existed during the golden age of airbending, a time when the nations weren't yet fully united, a time of growing tension. Back then, the air nomads acted almost like spiritual mediators between rival clans and territories. But over time, maintaining peace became nearly impossible, and Sonum understood something terrifying. Balance alone wasn't enough anymore. The world was changing. So in response, Sonum journeyed deep into the spirit world, far beyond what most humans would ever dare explore. And there, she discovered how to channel spiritual energy directly through herself. Using that knowledge, Sonum created one of the most dangerous spiritual artifacts in Avatar history, a staff capable of granting airbending abilities to others. And eventually, she passed that power onto her most devoted student, Togga. At first, Togga appeared loyal, but then everything changed. The Earth Nation began abandoning diplomacy entirely, military expansion intensified, and eventually the air nomads were nearly wiped out. That destruction scarred Togga permanently. He no longer believed peace was possible, only revenge. And soon, he turned against Sonum herself. Togga demanded she create an army of airbenders, an unstoppable force capable of crushing the Earth Kingdom and every nation that opposed them. But Sonum refused, and that refusal led to catastrophe. Togga stole her staff, using its spiritual energy to transform himself into something far beyond an ordinary bender. Forced into conflict with her own student, Sonum fought desperately to stop him, eventually managing to imprison Togga beneath the ice atop Mount Bayou. But the battle came at a terrible cost. Sonum herself was mortally wounded. Knowing she was dying, she hid herself, her temple, and her remaining knowledge deep within the spirit world where only a future avatar could ever find them. And centuries later, that avatar would finally arrive. After unknowingly freeing Togga from the ice, Aang eventually discovered the truth about Sonum's sacrifice. And after Togga's eventual defeat, Sonum was finally reunited with the other past avatars, where she remained until Korra severed the past lives forever. Avatar Xian. Compared to other avatars, very little is known about Xian, which honestly makes him one of the most mysterious figures in the entire Avatar cycle. An Earth Kingdom avatar encountered briefly by Aang during his search for knowledge surrounding Sonum, and despite his short appearance, Xian immediately stood out. Unlike the disciplined wisdom of Yangchen or the overwhelming intensity of Kyoshi, Xian felt unpredictable. He joked constantly, forgot details mid-conversation, and carried himself more like a wandering adventurer than the Avatar, but beneath that carefree personality was genuine mastery. Xian appeared highly skilled in both sand bending and plant bending, two incredibly specialized forms of earth manipulation. And considering how rare plant bending is throughout Avatar history, that alone makes him remarkable. What's even more fascinating is how little history remembers him. No global catastrophe tied to his name, which raises a very interesting possibility. Maybe Xian existed during one of the rare periods where balance was actually maintained successfully, or maybe his accomplishments were simply erased by time itself. Either way, Xian remains one of the greatest unknowns in Avatar history. Avatar Szeto. Most fans barely know Szeto's name, but politically, he may be one of the most effective avatars to ever exist. Szeto lived during a time when the Fire Nation was collapsing internally. The Fire Nation wasn't even truly unified yet. It was still a fractured collection of rival powers struggling for control. And unlike avatars like Kyoshi or Korra, Szeto didn't solve problems through intimidation or brute force. He entered the system not as the Avatar, but as a bureaucrat. While other avatars traveled the world fighting battles, Szeto climbed the Fire Nation hierarchy from within, quietly preventing the nation from collapsing entirely. Just the most effective method for his problem control through administration, and as expected, it worked. But make no mistake, Szeto was still terrifyingly powerful. One of his most famous feats shows him simultaneously lava bending 4 volcanoes during a massive eruption. That level of raw elemental output places him among the strongest avatars ever seen. That stability eventually allowed the Fire Nation to grow into one of the most powerful civilizations on Earth. Avatar Yangchen. If Szeto saved a nation through politics, Yangchen maintained peace through control, and in many ways, she became one of the most respected avatars in history, but also one of the most dangerous. Yangchen existed during a period of rising instability between humans and spirits, and global tension threatened to spiral into chaos. Unlike Aang, Yangchen learned something very early. Peace does not survive on ideals alone. Sometimes balance requires manipulation. She became a master strategist, and during her era, human civilization flourished. For an entire generation, the nations experienced unprecedented peace. But there was one enormous problem. Yangchen consistently prioritized humanity over the spirits. Again and again, when forced to choose between the two worlds, she sided with humans. And over time, the spirit world began to resent her for it. Dark spirits multiplied. spiritual instability spread, and resentment toward humanity continued growing beneath the surface. Yangchen understood the danger, but she believed protecting humanity came first, and while history would eventually remember her as a saint-like avatar, her decisions created consequences the world wouldn't fully understand until the next avatar arrived. Avatar Kuruk. At first glance, Kuruk looks like one of the worst avatars in history. He surfed, partied, hunted, and avoided responsibility. And while the world appeared peaceful, he seemed to accomplish almost nothing publicly. That's the story history remembers, but the truth is far darker, because Kuruk was fighting a war nobody else could see. And following Yangchen's death, spiritual imbalance exploded across the world. Dark spirits invaded the human realm in increasing numbers, and Kuruk became the only thing standing between humanity and total collapse. Hunting corrupted spirits throughout the world, and every victory slowly killed him, because each time Kuruk destroyed a dark spirit, it damaged his own life force. Meaning while the world called him lazy, he was literally dying to protect it, and eventually that endless burden broke him emotionally, which explains why Kuruk eventually drowned himself in distractions. Not because he was irresponsible, but because he was suffering. Then came the final tragedy. Kuruk fell in love with a woman named Omi, and for the first time in years, he wanted peace. But Ko the Face Stealer targeted him for interfering with spirits. During their wedding, Ko stole Omi's face, and that moment shattered Kuruk completely. From there, his body continued weakening, his spirit continued collapsing, and eventually, Kuruk died at just 33 years old, one of the youngest avatars in history. But here's the tragic irony. Kuruk sacrificed his reputation intentionally. He allowed the world to think he was lazy, because preserving Yangchen's legacy helped maintain stability among humanity, meaning one of the most hated avatars ever may actually have been one of the most selfless. Avatar Kyoshi. If Kuruk was hidden suffering, so Kyoshi was visible power. She didn't enter rooms, she dominated them. And unlike most avatars, Kyoshi wasn't even supposed to be the avatar. Following Kuruk's death, a boy named Yoon was incorrectly identified as the next avatar. Meanwhile, Kyoshi grew up poor, and that upbringing shaped everything. Eventually, during a spiritual confrontation connected to Kuruk's unfinished past, Kyoshi's true identity erupted into the open, and from that moment onward, she embraced the role completely. But unlike previous avatars, Kyoshi didn't believe balance should be gentle. She believed balance had to be enforced. Her earthbending was monstrous, capable of splitting terrain apart through sheer force, overwhelming elite opponents effortlessly, and her most infamous moment came against Qin the Conqueror, a warlord attempting to dominate the Earth Kingdom through military expansion. Most avatars might have negotiated. Kyoshi did none of that. Instead, she separated an entire peninsula from the mainland, creating Kyoshi Island itself, a literal geographical rewrite of the world. And when Qin fell to his death during the confrontation, Kyoshi accepted responsibility immediately, because to her, removing threats permanently was part of maintaining balance. That philosophy made her both feared and respected. But Kyoshi wasn't just destruction. She also built systems designed to preserve order long after her death. She founded the Kyoshi Warriors, a disciplined force built on precision and control. And perhaps most importantly, she helped create the Dai Li, an organization originally intended to preserve cultural stability within Ba Sing Se. Ironically, that same organization would later become one of the most corrupt and dangerous forces in the Earth Kingdom, meaning one of the greatest threats to bring Szeto to balance was indirectly created by the Avatar herself. And then there's perhaps the craziest part of Kyoshi's story. She lived over 200 years. Through advanced spiritual techniques connected to life energy manipulation, Kyoshi extended her lifespan far beyond normal human limits. Entire generations were born and died beneath her rule, and after centuries of absolute certainty and overwhelming force, the avatar who followed her would become her complete opposite, Avatar Roku. Roku had everything needed to stop catastrophe and still failed. Unlike Kyoshi, Roku believed people could change, and that belief ultimately doomed the world. Roku's closest friend was Fire Lord Sozin. The two grew up together. But over time, Sozin's ambition evolved into something darker, the belief that the Fire Nation had the right to spread its power across the world. When Sozin finally revealed those ambitions openly, Roku confronted him and completely overpowered him. He could have ended everything right there, but he didn't, because Sozin was his friend, and that single moment of hesitation changed history forever. Years later, Roku realized the full scale of Sozin's intentions, but by then, it was already too late. Then came the volcanic eruption on Roku's island, villain. And despite his age, Roku fought desperately to save civilians. Holding back lava flows across multiple volcanoes simultaneously. For a moment, it looked like redemption. Then Sozin arrived, not to save him, but to watch. And when poisonous gas overwhelmed Roku, Sozin abandoned him, leaving the Avatar to die. Because with Roku gone, there would be nobody left powerful enough to stop the Fire Nation. That decision directly enabled the Air Nomad Genocide, the 100-Year War, the destruction of entire civilizations, all tracing back to one act of mercy. Roku wasn't weak, he was compassionate in a world that punished compassion. And even after death, he spent the rest of his existence trying to help Aang avoid repeating the same mistake. Avatar Aang. Aang wasn't just the Avatar, he was the last survivor of an extinct people. Before the war, Aang was just a child, avoiding responsibility whenever possible. But everything changed when the monks revealed he was the Avatar years earlier than expected. Suddenly, he wasn't just a kid anymore, he was a symbol. Terrified by the pressure, Aang ran away, and during a massive storm, he accidentally entered the Avatar state, freezing both himself and Appa within an iceberg for 100 years, while the world burned. During that time, the Fire Nation exterminated the Air Nomads, meaning when Aang finally awoke, everything he loved was already gone, and that guilt never truly left him. But Aang's story wasn't about becoming the strongest Avatar, it was about identity. Throughout his journey, he mastered the elements under legendary teachers, water bending from Katara and Pakku, earth bending from Toph, fire bending from Zuko. But his greatest struggle wasn't physical, it was philosophical, because every past Avatar told him the same thing: kill Ozai, end the threat permanently, but Aang refused, because killing Ozai meant abandoning the values of the Air Nomads, meaning his final battle wasn't just about defeating the Fire Lord, it was about deciding what kind of Avatar he wanted to become. Then came the Lion Turtle, and energy bending, a forgotten ability capable of manipulating the energy within another person. Instead of killing Ozai, Aang removed his bending entirely, a solution nobody expected, and that decision reshaped the world. After the war, Aang helped rebuild civilization. He founded Republic City, restored global diplomacy, and guided humanity into a new technological era. Avatar Korra. Korra was the complete opposite of Aang. Where Aang avoided conflict, Korra ran directly toward it. She mastered 3 elements as a child, defined herself through strength, and viewed being the Avatar almost like a responsibility she needed to prove herself worthy of. But Republic City shattered that confidence, because physical strength alone couldn't solve systemic problems. Her enemies weren't simple conquerors, and each conflict broke Korra in different ways. Then Rava was destroyed, along with her connection to every previous Avatar, and in that moment, Korra became the beginning of a new Avatar cycle. Then she made one of the most controversial decisions in Avatar history. She left the spirit portals open, reuniting spirits and humans for the first time since Wan. That decision transformed reality itself. Spirits returned permanently, airbenders reappeared, and the modern world entered an entirely new era. But Korra's greatest battle wasn't external, it was internal. After Zahir poisoned and nearly killed her, Korra suffered severe trauma. She became stronger through healing. By the time Kuvira emerged, Korra no longer fought purely through force. Instead, she fought through understanding. During their final confrontation, Korra contained an explosion powerful enough to tear open reality itself, accidentally creating an entirely new spirit portal, changing the world again. But in the end, Korra didn't defeat Kuvira by overpowering her, she reached her emotionally, and that moment perfectly defines Korra's legacy. She wasn't the Avatar who preserved the old world, she was the Avatar who transformed it, even if the consequences of those decisions remain uncertain, and eventually those consequences would give rise to a new generation entirely. Avatar Pavi. Following Korra comes one of the most mysterious future avatars yet, Avatar Pavi, an Earth avatar born into a post-apocalyptic world forever reshaped by the consequences of Korra's era, a world where balance itself appears unstable, where civilization has fractured, and where bending users have gone into hiding. Unlike previous avatars, Pavi's challenge isn't simply mastering the elements, it's finding them, because in this future, many benders are afraid to even reveal themselves publicly, meaning locating teachers may become nearly impossible. And yet despite that overwhelming challenge, Pavi begins her journey anyway, accompanied by her friend and airbending master Jay. What makes Pavi especially fascinating is how difficult her path already appears. She is believed to be a one-legged avatar, meaning from the very beginning, she is forced to overcome limitations most avatars never faced. But honestly, that may be exactly what makes her important, because throughout Avatar history, the greatest avatars were rarely defined by comfort. They were defined by struggle. And if Korra reshaped the world through radical change, then Pavi may become the avatar forced to rebuild what remains afterward. Avatar Genji. Now before ending this video, we need to talk about one of the most fascinating Avatar concepts the fandom has ever created, Avatar Genji. Unlike the others on this list, Genji is not an official canon avatar, but his popularity reveals something incredibly important about the future of the franchise. Because Genji represents a world where people no longer trust the avatar, a world transformed by technology, a world where balance itself has become controversial. And honestly, that's a brilliant direction for the Avatar universe, because every avatar before him inherited a broken world, so naturally, a future avatar inheriting distrust toward the avatar cycle itself feels like the next logical evolution, which is exactly why the idea of Genji became so popular. His challenge isn't simply mastering the elements, it's proving the avatar still matters. And with future Avatar projects already officially in development, there's a very real possibility the franchise explores similar themes moving forward anyway.
So there you have it, friends. If you loved this video, check out this video on all 19 special and forbidden abilities. I will see you there.